What's up, Packer fans? Happy Friday. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Sorry if I sound a little bit raspy, if I look a little bit tired. It's 1:19 in the morning as I'm recording this on Friday. Just got back from Milwaukee enjoying the Bucks' victory over the Brooklyn Nets, which was obviously a fun game if you're a Bucks fan, getting the win. Very interesting game. It certainly was entertaining down the stretch, but definitely some bad basketball on both sides for a good chunk of that game. Very defensive 1990s, Pistons sort of battle, but Bucks come away with a win, and you can't complain about that too much. So had the opportunity to get to go to that, but regardless of how raspy I sound or how tired I am, there's a lot to discuss from a Packers standpoint that happened on Thursday. So definitely have a great show lined up for you. Going to get to my minicamp report and reactions in just a moment. But before we even get there, a lot of news and notes from Thursday. And to me, the most important one, the biggest news of all, is the Packers announcement that they will be back to full capacity at Lambeau Field this upcoming season, but not just during regular season, during preseason, during family night, during training camp. They will be back to normal for the Green Bay Packers. And, as long as I've been doing the video here on YouTube, there hasn't been much better news that I can think of than that. To get fans back in Lambeau obviously helps the team, obviously helps the community of Green Bay, helps the businesses in the community of Green Bay. And it just from a fan standpoint, there's nothing like Lambeau Field. And it felt weird, last year as I was going, from a credentialed standpoint, going into Lambeau Field for those practices, and just knowing that for the most part fans were not going to be able to partake in that, going to training camp practices knowing that fans were not going to get to partake in that, just wasn't the same. The atmosphere wasn't the same. None of it was the same, and obviously games were not the same last year. So to have this get back to normal again, there's no bigger news, there's no better news that's going to happen than that. I suppose if Rodgers would have returned, that would have been bigger news, maybe better news as well. But the fans are what make sports go. I think we've really learned that over the course of the last year plus, and cannot wait to see a packed Lambeau Field. Cannot wait to see a packed training camp once again. So could not be more excited about that. On the flip side, we did learn that Jace Sternberger was suspended for the first two games of the season. Not going to read his full statement, but if you have a chance to do so, I definitely recommend it. One of the big things here, especially when you're probably under 25 years old and you're an NFL player, mistakes happen for all of us, right? I've made mistakes. I'm sure you've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. It's how you respond to the mistake. It's not the mistake itself usually. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, but it's how you respond to the mistake. And with Jace Sternberger in this situation, you can tell he's in a better place. He has learned from that mistake, and he has owned that mistake. And that is the best thing that you can do in that situation and scenario. So kudos to Jace for that. I thought his statement was very well done. I thought it was very classy. And you can tell, again, that he's learned from his mistake and he's growing from it. So that's all you want to see in those sort of situations. This isn't a felony sort of thing here from Jace. It's a mistake that he made. He owned it and he's learned from it. So, and again, I think he's in a better spot now than, from learning from it. So that's all you could ask in that scenario. From a Packers standpoint, obviously you don't want to see Jace Sternberger suspended for the first two games of the season. This is already a massive offseason as Jace kind of tries to really get his career on track and be worthy of that top 100 selection when Green Bay spent a third-round pick on him. So this doesn't help that. From an odds standpoint, and I've talked about this before, and I tweeted it yesterday as well, from a suspension standpoint, especially when it's a two-game suspension, especially when it's somebody that's kind of like a fringe roster player, a two-game suspension in a way is almost like a cheat code as you're trying to finalize your final roster. Unlike somebody that you want to be able to bring back from IR, where you have to keep them on your roster for that 53-man cutdown and then place them on IR the next day so you can bring somebody back. Unlike that, when somebody goes on suspension, you can place them on suspension prior to your 53-man roster cutdown. So they go on suspension, which is basically like getting to keep a 54th player in this scenario. You don't have to cut Jace Sternberger. You don't have to, bring him on the active roster on cutdowns just to bring him back so you can suspend him. And cutdown day, you just put him on the suspend list, the reserve suspend list. And it's like basically getting a 54th player on your roster. Now you have to pay for all of those extra players. So, let me clarify, he'll be suspended without pay, so you're not exactly paying him, but the more players you have in your roster, you're paying them throughout the course of the season, obviously, but it's still, in a way to get an extra player on your roster. So and by the time Jace comes back in week 3, usually somebody else has gotten hurt in those first 2 weeks, where now again you're looking at an IR rule where you can come back after 3 weeks. That's what they're discussing and looking to carry over from last season. Likely someone in those first 2 weeks got hurt that needs to go on IR for 3 weeks. Now you put them on IR for 3 weeks, Jace comes back, he's ready to go, and then by the time that person's ready to come back, somebody else is ready to go on IR, and you just kind of have this perpetual cycle. So from a Packers standpoint, it's not like in those first 2 weeks you're going to be like, man, we would be ready to go for this game if we just had Jay Sternberger, right? You have Dominique Daphne, you have Josiah DeGuara, you've got Mercedes Lewis, you've got Bobby Tunyon. Like, you're going to have enough bodies at that position where you're going to be just fine without Jace, but it allows you to keep basically an extra player come cutdown time. So a bummer, you don't want to see it. You don't want to see a player suspended, but in a way, it's not the worst case scenario in the world for Green Bay, especially with a roster they have where, there's probably going to be 56, 57 guys that they're going to want to keep on their roster. This is a way to kind of keep one extra one, even though if it's not the most ideal situations and circumstances. Other news that came up, Jake Dolagala, the quarterback that was in on a tryout basis, gets a contract, and he becomes the 5th quarterback on the roster, which is basically unheard of. So, of course, they got Aaron Rodgers, sort of, Jordan Love, Blake Bortles, and Jake Dolagala, and then Kurt Benkert, excuse me. So they've got 5 total quarterbacks on the roster at this point. And like I said, that's really unheard of. So this could be a situation where, you remember, there's still OTAs next week. They just want 4 quarterbacks for those OTAs. They know Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be at OTAs, and they're going to go let Dolagala, Bortles, and Benkert battle it out next week at OTAs, and then they'll release one of them after OTAs as they go into training camp. So it maybe gives them one more week to take a look at Dolagala. Maybe they like something they saw, and they're going to allow those quarterbacks to maybe battle it out in OTAs next week before they get to training camp. If you're very cynical, you could say, all right, they've got 5 quarterbacks on the roster. Do they not feel great about Aaron Rodgers? More on that in just a moment. In order to get Dolagala on the roster, they did need to make a roster move, which meant Anthony Rush was actually released. So defensive tackle who spent some time with the team last year, obviously was with them in OTAs and minicamp this year, is released so they can keep Dolagala, or add Dolagala to the roster, I should say. Another piece of news, De'Vondre Campbell officially signs a 1-year, $2 million deal with a signing bonus and basically $1.1 million in a cap hit in 2021. But the signing bonus is such that he's making the roster. So if there's any question of like, this is potentially maybe like a vet minimum sort of deal where there's not any thing guaranteed, or maybe just very minimal guaranteed, where it's like, he's just coming in for competition, and if he makes it, great. If not, we can release him. It's not that at all. You can permanent marker him in right now to your 53-man roster predictions. Based on the bonus they gave him, he's going to be a Green Bay Packer this season. So this is not a veteran to bring in for competition. He is making the 53 based on his contract. Good on Tom Silverstein for getting the details of that contract. And that's where, again, I tweeted this out as well, but as you're trying to read the tea leaves from this, you're like, all right, on one hand, they just added a 5th quarterback. Like, are we reading into this something with Aaron Rodgers here? Does that mean that potentially things aren't on the up and up, or things aren't going well? On the flip side, they just added De'Vondre Campbell, put 4 more years of, basically void years on that contract so they can push the money down further and basically add another player to try to win now this season on a 1-year deal where they're pushing money out into future years. Are you going all in and continuing to make these moves if you don't think Aaron Rodgers is coming back? My gut tells me no. So you have, both sides of the fence here as you're trying to read these tea leaves of what it means for Aaron Rodgers. The truth is, the signing of Jake Dolagala means nothing about Aaron Rodgers. The 5 quarterbacks is a little bit weird, and you have to kind of adjust your mind to it a little bit, but signing Jake Dolagala means nothing about Aaron Rodgers. On the flip side, the fact that they're still trying to go all in on this season and sign more players and get a guy like De'Vondre Campbell on the roster leads me to believe a little bit more that maybe they feel like this is still an all-in type of year. And if that's the case, would lead you to believe that maybe a certain QB1 will be back at some point. Read into it what you may, still very inconclusive. Probably means nothing, but if you want to try to read the tea leaves, those are 2 interesting ones to try to read. As far as practice goes, I'm going to go kind of lightning round through this. It was mostly a nondescript practice. I would even say boring for parts of it, good parts of it, except for team activities. Very disjointed when they did get into team. Multiple false starts, both offensive false starts, offsides on the defense, some missed snaps, some just bizarre stuff that was happening. Ball was on the ground. Aaron Jones fumbled. Missed exchange between Jordan Love and Dexter Williams on a toss. There was a completely disjointed play where Love threw an interception to Eric Stokes, and you might be thinking, oh, Love. It was just a completely disjointed play. I couldn't even tell that maybe Love thought that they jumped off sides. Like MVS didn't even get out on his route. I think he just honestly threw it out there because it was not. Like, you don't judge anything off of that play. Obviously, nice play by Stokes to intercept the ball, but don't judge anything on Jordan Love on that throw. It was just a weird, bizarro play that was completely off. But that was kind of the entire state of practice. Just a very disjointed practice. Not, didn't seem like there was 100% focus. Lafleur got on the players a couple times. He obviously wanted it to be a bit more crisp, and it just wasn't. So it was just that kind of day. Sometimes that happens. As far as Jordan Love goes, same sort of thing, just kind of a nondescript day. Nothing great. He had a nice post pass touchdown to Juwan Winfrey in the back of the end zone. Made a couple other nice reads. I thought his pocket presence was better. The first few days I was there, obviously I was not there for his amazing performance, but first few days I was there, his pocket awareness and just kind of overall, it was just shaky and unconfident. I thought today he looked better in his presence. There was one play where, pocket kind of broke down. He was able to roll out, get outside and scramble a little bit. There was another where he, again, kind of breaking down on the outsides. He stepped up confidently in the pocket, kept his eyes downfield. So again, you want to see these little things over and over from Jordan Love. I thought that was a step that he took in Thursday's practice with just kind of having better poise and pocket presence within the pocket and the ability to kind of break out of it or step into it when he needed to. Mentioned Eric Stokes with an interception. I thought he had a really nice day overall. I thought he looked good in coverage. He, of course, had that weird, bizarro interception. Again, the gist of it was like, it looked like there was a weird thing at the snap and the questions as to whether or not the play was going to get blown dead or not. MVS didn't even go on his route, and then Love just kind of rolling out. There's pressure in his face. Looked like it would have been probably a sack anyway. Love just kind of gets rid of it. It ends up going right to Eric Stokes, and he picks it off. Nice play by Stokes, but again, don't read too much into that one individual play. But even without that interception, I thought he looked pretty good at practice and was his best day that I was there at practice over the last few weeks. Juwan Winfrey had another big, touchdown catch in the back of the end zone in team drills. So he continues to make plays. He's a player that's shown up a little bit. I thought he looked crisp just when they were doing route running on air. I thought he looked crisp in and out of his routes as well. So will be a player to kind of keep an eye on as training camp comes around. Royce Newman, I've been talking about getting time with the ones at right tackle, getting time with the ones at right guard. He got time with the ones at left guard on Thursday. So we've seen him at right tackle, right guard, and left guard with the ones through OTAs and minicamp so far, which is really impressive for a fourth-round rookie pick that he's getting different looks all across the line with the ones. Again, I mean, that you can't ask for more than that at this point of his career. Obviously, Green Bay has some level of trust in him to move around and potentially to be in the conversation there. Ben Braden, for the first time that I saw at least, actually got some time with the ones at right tackle as well. So Billy Turner spending some time at left tackle in this practice, and Braden got to spend some time at right tackle with the ones. So they're trying to figure out what pieces work the best next to each other. I know there's always the old adage of it's tough to switch sides, but Matt Lafleur and this Packers team has no issues with moving players around. We saw that last year, and it certainly seems like that's going to continue this year. Shamar Jean-Charles, really nice pass breakup. The defense was super pumped when he made the play. Looked like a really great throw from Love to MVS. It was like all the players were kind of standing right in front of us, so none of us got a great look at what happened. But end of the day, Shamar Jean-Charles came up with the pass breakup, and the defense was completely fired up about it. So if you don't know, Shamar Jean-Charles was a pass breakup king. In college, he broke up a ton of passes. He already broke one up earlier in OTAs against Amari Rodgers on a slant play, had a nice pass break up against MVS, so he just kind of continues to do his thing. Also noted that Bobby Tonyan looks, I think, in very good shape, very svelte, I tweeted, which apparently is not a very well-known word on Twitter, I guess, but looked in great shape. Looked, I don't know if he looks... skinnier is the wrong word, but he looks in great shape. He looks like he's ready to go. Looks a little bit, thinner, maybe in a good way. He looks agile. He looks quick. Matt Lafleur mentioned they want to use him more in the passing game. I think it was last week he mentioned that, and maybe take a bigger role in the offense, and he looks ready to do so. I thought he looked really well in practice today as well. Stanford Samuels had a nice pass breakup. Cabianento and Malik Turner were the first two out on the punt team as gunners. That may not sound like much, but if you're the first team gunners, your odds of making the team go up pretty exponentially. So that's, again, it may not sound like much. It may not sound something sexy when we're looking at who's starting where and who's doing what. If you're the top two gunners, like, Malik Taylor and Cabianento were today, we'll see if that continues into training camp and in preseason and things like that. But that is a really, really good way to make the roster. That would obviously be a very good sign for both of those players. Devin Funchess was back practicing. I know he dropped out in Wednesday's practice for some portions, but he was back. Players not practicing included Chris Blair, Aaron Rodgers, Kadar Hallman, Elton Jenkins, Isaac Nauta, Preston Smith, and Dean Lowry. Plays of the day, I actually thought Amari Rodgers made two really nice ones. So on one, they did kind of like it was like almost like a reverse toss. So Rodgers kind of came in motion, and then, it almost looked like it was going to be a pitch, but they pitched to the running back, but they pitched it to Rodgers kind of on the reverse instead. He got out to the sideline, won a foot race with Chris Barnes and got up the field. Nice looking play there. Nice job by the offensive line and everyone to kind of get him sprung to the outside, and then Rodgers kind of did the rest from there. And then just in individual drills, Rodgers had a ridiculous one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. It was against air, so not like it was a contested catch or anything like that, but was a difficult catch, and he just went up, one-handed it. Was an impressive play for the rookie. So I thought Amari had a nice day, and again, two really nice plays. Kind of last thing, Matt Lafleur had his post-practice press conference once again. I thought the big takeaway there, he was talking about Rashawn Gary. He said, quote, "He's going to be a big-time player for us, and I think he's going to be a big-time player in this league for a long time." I mentioned this with Perry Goldstein on the audio podcast a few weeks back. Even what I saw from him when he announced the draft pick at the draft, he may have done, I think it was Josh Myers, because, he said the Michigan-Ohio State thing. Just his confidence up on stage, you could tell how confident of a player he was just in that individual setting, where before maybe he was a little bit more quiet. Like, he's taking on more of a role. He was talking smack at practice today. This is a player that is full of confidence right now. I think Matt LaFleur's spot on. I'm looking for a really big season from Rashawn Gary, just even the way he's handling himself out on the field. And then last but not least, I know obviously I want you to check out the Pack a Day podcast first, listen here, subscribe here, everything like that. But if you get a chance, Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks on Move the Sticks podcast did like an hour-long Jordan Love breakdown from interviews they've done with him in the past, to talking to him at the Senior Bowl, to their scouting reports prior to the draft and how they felt about him. And it was interesting to hear how they, there were times throughout the process where they viewed him ahead of Justin Herbert and so on and so forth. Like, just a really, really great episode that I can't recommend enough. And you're definitely going to really want to go out there and check it out, because again, I think you're going to really like what you hear about the process and Jordan Love and just who he is as a player. Definitely learned a lot more about Love. And again, I think you're really going to enjoy that episode. So if you haven't yet, make sure to check that out. And after, of course, listening to the first 1,052 episodes of the Pack a Day podcast, get through those first, then go listen to Move the Sticks. Should take up the majority of your weekend, to say the least. But appreciate you joining me today. Sorry if I didn't seem my normal 100% self, but I am literally exhausted. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll be right back here tomorrow. Subscribe if you haven't. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.